Greetings. My name is Dr. Zebulon Maletsky. I'm the Chair of Marketing and PR for the Association for the Study of African American Life and History and the Executive Producer of ASALH TV. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to our series in Retrospect and Prospect, Topics in African American Life and History, produced, edited, and hosted by our very own Dr. Lopez Matthews, Chair of the Publications Committee for ASALH. Dr. Lopez writes, in remembering Dr. Carter G. Woodson, Mary McLeod Bethune wrote the article, The Negro in Retrospect and Prospect. In this piece, she examined the past, foretold the future, and issued a challenge to the post-war informed and educated Black American citizenry. In this spirit, we speak to interesting figures in the Black community to discuss the past, the present, and what we imagine the future will hold. We hope you'll continue to join us and enjoy this series. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Lopez Matthews, and I'm the chair of the Publications Committee for the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And today I am here with DeLisa Harris, the Special Collections Librarian at Fisk University, and Holly Smith, the College Archivist for Spelman College. And today we're going to discuss the state of HBCU archives. And so thank you both for being with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely, thank you.
So my first question is, what would you say is the importance of archives at HBCUs?
So I think it's important because of what HBCUs represent as far as their foundings. So you have these institutions that come at the end of slavery, the end of the Civil War, and they're here to educate African Americans. And so having an archive at an HBCU plays a significant role in really telling a full story about the lives of African American people from their founding and well into now. And then just preserving that history, that information, you know, what courses they were taking, who was involved in the university's life. And if you look, it's most HBCUs, it's cultural arts, it's business, it's, science and technology. And so you don't see that documentation maybe at other institutions. So it's very valuable and important.
And my sister colleague Lisa said it all. And I think, again, like, just to reiterate what she's saying, this is often the HBCU archives are often the only place you're going to get a comprehensive, again, of that particular institution. But again, like Lisa was saying, the communities that surround it or have, a lot of HBCUs also have special collections. So we're documenting the institutions, but Spelman, we are actually, the archives, we're actually part of the Women's Resource and Research Center since the Atlanta University Center Library, Woodruff Library, which services all the schools in the Atlanta University Center, has an archive, and we work with our colleagues there. So we kind of have a unique position to be part of the Women's Resource and Research Center, the radical progressive space on campus that houses comparative women's studies. So we also have a charge to document women of the African diaspora broadly. So it's, I would say, a real pleasure and a rare treat to not have to justify why documenting Black women and Black lives and communities are important, which I know we can find ourselves having to do at other institutions.
Okay. That's a great point that you brought up. I was speaking with Kimberly Phillips yesterday, and we talked about documenting women's history, and she talked about how important Dorothy Porter Wesley was to the preservation of African American history, and how important it is to have people who understand your cultural background preserving your history, because it goes into the arrangement, the description, what's preserved. And so being in HBCU archives, I am at Howard, you know, you really understand the history of our people just by going to an HBCU archive. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to go out of order. I know I sent you all a list of questions, but my out of order question is, as we're in this current period of national crisis and protest, how do you think HBCU archives should document those stories?
I believe that HBCUs should definitely be on the front lines of during this time, because we've always been on the front lines when it comes to protests. If we look at our student bodies, you know, we look at Jackson State, we look at Howard, you know, we look at Fisk, we look at Spelman. All these institutions played a vital role in not only the 60s, but even before that. So when you had a time when a lot of the HBCUs were being led by white administrations, there were similar protests to that vein. And so even I was speaking to one of my classmates from Fisk, and we were talking about when we were students, how we went down to Louisiana to protest for the Gina 6. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it seems like every kind of decade or maybe not even a decade, 5 years, there's something where our attention is called towards in the Black community. And so we have to be there to capture those stories, to say, you know, for example, here in Nashville, one of the activists who's leading the charge really here is Justin Jones, and he's a Fiskite. And so, you know, I've been connecting with him and just trying to ensure that his story is captured, because a lot of times those activist stories may not have been captured at that moment. And so I think now, as we recognize how collecting was happening in the 60s and 70s, we want to ensure that it's, you know, more focused and more responsive, and not like on the back end, like, oh, that was a moment, and try to then kind of collect things and go out, which is still good, but, you know, being proactive is important. So, yeah.
and again, to be the amen corner, DeLisa, really, it, you know, when I think about, you know, kind of the way I would say you know, most of the, you know, progressive minded archivists I know, and particularly Black archivists, we know we're not just passive keepers of dead records. We are actively involved. You know, it's a collection development policy really is a political statement about what you choose to take and not. And I think people don't necessarily see it that way, but I think we have a special passion and charge, exactly like DeLisa was saying, to, you know, not just have these one narrow views. You know, we want to work collaboratively and not co-optively, because we know skin folk can't you know, like whether you're a Black archivist at HBC or not, you know, we can perpetuate those same systems of, you know, oppression and silencing and respectability politics, whose story gets told. So working with, again, community activists, student activists, the administration, and thankfully what has been really refreshing since I've been at Spelman, it's been 6 years, to have the opportunity to work with a lot of the student activists who are really aligned with the Women's Center in a lot of ways, and to see their kind of interest and excitement in archives, exactly kind of through the national picture of protests, but the, you know, protest and rebellions and pushback of Spelman students against restrictive policies. Again, all white administrations. The students led a lockout of the Board of Trustees in '76 after Dr. Manley retired and Dr. Stewart was selected instead of a Black woman. So, and I think once they, exactly like you're saying, DeLisa, learn that and connect the history and get, you know, really interested in kind of we proactively going out to work with the students in a safe, mindful way, but letting them know we want, you know, very interested in having those photographs and those protests and other things as well, I think kind of help changes the narrative of who we are, what we do, and what archives can be.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are both great points. And that's one of the things that I try to tell people when I talk about HBCU archives. Because sometimes when they talk about us, because I'm at an HBCU archive, they say, oh, well, do you not have what Harvard has? Do you not have what Yale has? Do you not have what all these big billion-dollar white schools have? And I'm like, sure, we may not have the billion-dollar white school budget, but we have the people and we have the care, and we can preserve and protect your records. And so don't discount us,
Right.
Working with the people, we're working with the students, we're working with the admin, we're there, we're preserving history. And so, we're a very important part of preserving not only our HBCU's history, but our community's history. So I'm so glad that both of you hit on that. And so, as we go through this COVID-19 pandemic, which people seem to think is over, but it's not. I said that in another interview. I see people.
The other pandemic, right?
Exactly.
Right.
How do you see us making it through this situation? Because it has caused so many changes to the whole higher education landscape.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I don't want DeLisa to feel pressured to always have to go first.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to, we can, there's no order.
It's okay.
I realized I hope I don't feel pressured. Just, I'll say briefly on that. I think, like you said, it really, the severity, like you said, of this national health crisis, and particularly the health disparities in Black communities and other, communities, Black and Brown and Indigenous communities as well, know that, we're being affected, and how to really capture that. On a personal note, I've been very thankful to see Spelman's response. We are still working remotely, and not sure in terms of specifically what to do around the fall. I appreciate the steps, being mindful of the health and safety of the students, as well as the staff, and also the recognition of, like you said, the trauma that has been visited on everyone personally who've been affected, which I know is not always the case in a lot of institutions. And just in terms of, I think, like you said, really re-envisioning how we can support researchers and referencing classes to, continue to share the resources and give some sort of normalcy, whatever that means in this day and age, has really allowed me to reshift. Thankfully, we have quite a bit of content that's been digitized as part of a project with AUC Woodruff and the Digital Library of Georgia, and, really seeing what can be done, at least remotely and safely. And also to mention our colleagues at AUC Woodruff, and I'm happy to share that link with both of you if you haven't seen it, have been working to document people's experiences broadly across the AUC with its alumni or students with COVID, and now have a digital collection, which is, really fantastic. And finally, I'll say, seeing a post by Lopez, really about how Howard, dealt with the pandemic of 1918. I was like, that's a great idea. Let me look in a mindful, respectful way. And the way you did it was so good. It was just like, not like, here's a fun fact. It was like, let's make these historical connections. So was able to find some in the Spelman Messenger, our main campus publication, just to kind of make the connections, help with the research, and just kind of, again, trying to have, yes, it's historic information, but we're all being affected by this pandemic, personally, professionally, and what are some of the ways that HBCUs have survived and maintained historically. So yeah, long answer too.
Yeah. With the pandemic and everything that's going on with COVID-19, Fisk has, like Holly stated with Spelman, has really kind of stepped up. And even before we were quarantined, there was a council that was developed, and a team that would look into how we would handle it as a university. And for the library, we've been strong as a team, just working together, and it's been interesting because the things that we wanted to do before the pandemic, like getting our materials out there in the digital space, and having a better web page, is now all happening. You know, it's this push because of the pandemic. And so I'm like, great, you know, and my colleague and I have been going after some of the COVID pandemic grants that they, you know, don't require for matching, things like that. And I've also worked with a faculty member in the history department who asked her students to submit just a letter or a statement regarding how during this time has affected them and what they've been going through. So, and we want to continue that into the fall and sort of get a full project going. I am glad to say that we are across the street from Meharry Medical College. So, and I don't know if you guys know, but the president of Meharry has been, he testified in front of Congress regarding the pandemic, and he's really been a leader here in Tennessee and a real voice of reason. You know, we're in the South, so a lot of people want to open up, be outside, and he's like, look, you know, we need to be steadfast in the plan. Like, and so they've been working with the community here in Nashville, the North Nashville community, which is the Black community near Meharry and Fisk, and Tennessee State. So, and just hearing all the projects like that have been going on with AUC Woodruff, even down at the Amistad in New Orleans, it's inspired me to think more about how I can, as the special collections librarian, really connect with the community about what's happened, you know, what's going on. And so, yeah, and just collaborating with more of my colleagues at Meharry, at Tennessee State. Yeah, so I really, is that answering the question?
It answers the question very well. You know?
Okay, I'm like,
how it's affecting you, how it's inspiring you. You know, it's so, you know, it's so great to hear because, you know, especially with social media today, I actually said I'm not getting on Twitter at all because it's just so negative and it's just so, it just brings you down because you just post and post and post and post. And so I said, you know, I'm gonna take a break from this. And so it's great to hear, you know, all these positive things happening in projects and that it's actually helping you in some ways. And so, you know, it's not just devastation. And so, you know, great to hear. And it did very much so answer the question. And it kind of leads into my next question about what do you see as the future of HBCU archives? I know that's a loaded question.
yes, the future, no. You know, I think here's the thing. I've come across a lot of my colleagues at different HBCU archives, special collections, and I'm inspired by what they are doing and what they're trying to accomplish. Like, I feel like there's a lot of motivation amongst special collections and archives at HBCUs currently, and it's good because oftentimes, you know, people can forget that these places are doing things that are constantly improving and growing and making changes. And so I feel right now in my spirit, I feel positive about the future. I see more support from other colleagues at different institutions, and good and bad ways. You know, some people have certain agendas and others don't, where they just really genuinely want to support, help, collaborate, whatever. And so, yeah, I, you know, and I support the HBCU Library Alliance that we're all a part of. And I think that they've been getting a lot of work done. Well, Sandra Phoenix and her board has been getting a lot of work done. You know, getting these grants, getting this capacity building, and getting, you know, other grants, you know, name is slipping my mind, but yeah, I mean, the future feels bright. And I don't want to sound like naive as well, because we still need support. we still need people to, earmark that donation for the library, for the archives. We still need alumni to come through, not just on homecoming, not just on graduation, but all the time, and visit and talk and check it out, see what's going on, support the exhibits, the programs we do. Go visit our digital spaces, because clicks matter. And so it's all these things. No matter what, we will always need the support of our community, our alumni, our staff, our faculty, our administrations. So that's my spiel.
Amen. And I really, to go back to something you said again, Lopez, which I really appreciate and like to reiterate, HBCU archives and archivists, we are not lacking in expertise. So, when like you said, those conversations around help or collaborate, and I just kind of get really frustrated when even well-meaning institutions, predominantly white institutions, like, we have the expertise, we know the people in the communities. The language of being underfunded is what is really, critical, and under-supported externally or internally. So I really appreciate, you highlighting that, and knowing we're not at a deficit or dearth with the, in those areas. But exactly like DeLisa was saying, not always receiving the, proper funding and support in areas that we need. So I am really, again, confident that, we, the colleagues, my wonderful colleagues here, and all of us, at HBCUs, and though we're not in a library, I still am grateful to participate with the HBCU Library Alliance, and, the communities that we can find ourselves internally, externally out of organizations, to be able to advocate how we can, document diverse Black communities in equitable and just ways. And again, like you said, I'm exploring more support for having things more accessible online, which is exciting. And really, another thing I feel really passionate about are talking to Black students, particularly HBCUs, about this field, and being, very honest and transparent. But when I see their excitement and enthusiasm, when they come in and do projects and see, whether it's, Audre Lorde's papers or Tony K, or, they love the yearbooks of students, and then they ask questions. That's all it takes is for me to get, and to be honest, but to really say, hey, this is a thing you can do. And there are places, myriad types of places like HBCU archives where you can do them. So yeah, like I said, I feel like encouraged, again, like realistically optimistic, but not naive, because of spaces like this, and just communities that care, and the ways that we can advocate for ourselves and each other.
I think that's a great answer, and I think you both gave exceptional answers to that question, because I feel the exact same way. We are moving into the digital space. Hopefully we'll get more support with digital programs, but we will survive, because the ancestors won't let us not survive.
Right.
And and we will continue to preserve our history. And I think that one of the things that I hope people take away from this discussion is that we are maintaining our history. We can maintain our history, and that you should check out an HBCU archive, because we have amazing collections, amazing material that speak to you, your children, your future generations, and your past generations. And so hopefully everyone who is watching this today will come and visit an HBCU archive to learn more about us. And so, do you all have anything you would like to say before I close us out today?
Yes, I just want to say, going back to the discussion about COVID-19, while I absolutely hated that we are going through this in the pandemic, and just speaking to the fact that we've been able to get more support for digital efforts, we just hate it had to be like this. And that's where I stand. I don't want anyone to think that I was happy for the pandemic, because it's been rough on all of us. And Yeah. And so, also I want to say, this is going to be seen at a different time, but today is Breonna Taylor's birthday. So I'd be remiss if I did not say happy birthday to Breonna Taylor. And, justice for her and justice for everyone who's been a victim of police brutality. And please, if you're ever in Nashville, come visit Fisk University Special Collections and Archives.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank you both for this space, for the work you do, because particularly in the Black communities I inhabit, we are mad, angry, we're tired and frustrated, as everyone should be, but it really has affected us, of course, because it's not lost on myself that I can go home and come home safely, and no degree or amount of respectability politics is going to save you when the state sees you as a threat. And so to be able to articulate that in these spaces is vital to our survival and necessary. So I thank you both for being there. And like DeLisa said, just knowing that Breonna Taylor would have been 27 and as someone who turned 40 this year, I just can't imagine being murdered. Because language matters. It's not, they died, they were murdered. And
right. Yeah.
Again, and thank you for highlighting that. And there are a number of great Instagram, and Facebook and Twitter organizations that are advocating ways to support the justice petitions, the Action Network for the Atlanta Solidarity Fund to bail out the protesters. So I'm encouraged to see so many of us, sometimes I know I can get caught up. I want to do everything, all the things, and you make yourself feel guilty, but I have some money I can donate. I can make a sign, and I think even the way we're talking about documenting collaboratively is advocacy for our ancestors and communities. Because it's like, if you're on the, activists on the front lines, the last thing you need to be doing, worried about what you're going to do with your flyers, but that's something that I can work with you on and we can do. So it's just, encouraging in that way. And like you said about the pandemic, I am hoping that we as a society will just come out better. Like you said, to see the silver lining and know that Black folks be resilient, our communities and ancestors. It's a shame we got to go through, that's an understatement to say that, but I'm optimistic, like you said, and encouraged by the resiliency of our community. So I'm just grateful for both of you and all of our, colleagues for some joy and some levity and just to be able to make it through.
And that is what I'm thankful for too, just being able to be a part of a community that supports each other and to be able to work and document that history is so important to me. And that's why I'm really even doing this series for the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, because we really need to document our history. I think that what Carter G. Woodson did was just so groundbreaking and legitimizing the study of Black history. Because without our archives, he said, our history will be forgotten and will be a neglectful part of the world. I know I messed that quote up, but that's the spirit of the quote. But, just maintaining our history really tells how, where we've come from, where we've been. And I always tell people, last year, we celebrated the 400th anniversary of the arrival of Africans in what became the United States, or at least the British colonies that became the United States. I tell my students, it's, definitely 400 years of perseverance. And I tell them in our African American history class, this class isn't about how they beat up on Black people, even though that's most of the class, beating up on Black people, but it's about survival. And so that is what our story is. And it's really what our institutions are going to do, and survive this crisis and the next crisis, just like they've survived the ones in the past. So thank you all for being with me today. I hope you all were watching this and enjoyed our conversation. And so have a great day.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thanks again for watching. We hope you enjoyed this broadcast. We'd like to remind you to subscribe to ASALH TV, and you can also hit that notification bell to remind you of future broadcasts and episodes. We'd also like to ask you to consider making a donation to the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. If this information touched you, or if you learned something today, please consider making a donation no matter how big or small. You may make a donation by hitting the donate button in the description on the YouTube page for ASALH TV. We thank you for your support, and we look forward to seeing you in a future broadcast.